Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Wendell Jones, and welcome to this edition of our program, On Point, for this Monday. And we are going to have a good week here. We are starting out with a wonderful guest on our program today. There are a whole lot of young people in the Bahamas doing a whole lot of wonderful things. And 6 years ago, it was Jones Communications that really started the awards for Bahamians who were 40 under 40. Who were making their marks around the world. And then, of course, we decided that we would only do it once. It was a one-off because we were celebrating at the time the 40th anniversary of independence. And so we honored 40 Bahamians under the age of 40 who were doing some powerful things in the world. Well, today on our program, we have another young Bahamian, Diasi Raming Jr., who is the Chief Executive Officer of Arawak X. Mm-hmm. It's a company that is located at Sandy Port, and this company does equity crowdfunding and small and medium business financing. Mm-hmm. Mr. Raming tells me that he studied robotics at Northwestern University in Chicago. And he tells me, Skibo, that he is a graduate of Sachs and Augustine's College. And so that's not a bad thing. And so it's our pleasure to have him as our guest on the program today. Mr. Raming, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's very good. Glad that you're here. Why did you study robotics, Mr. Raming?
Well, as a kid, I've always been interested in building things, and so it always starts with the Lego, right? Mm-hmm. So as I grew up, I wanted to build things, and engineering was the natural cause thing to do. So I at first I went to try and be a chemical engineer, and then as happens to so many people, chemistry destroyed me. So I had to figure out what I wanted to do after that, and I fell in love kind of with aerospace and that kind of industry, and the type of robotics that I studied was called controlled systems design, which is the as close to building of modern airplanes as you could think of it as like avionics design. So.
There are many people who would ask, well, you studied robotics. Mm-hmm. What are you doing in the little Bahamas?
So afterwards, after university, I wanted to come back home. So obviously couldn't build those things. But there, as you know, we're a country that is in need of people to help build it. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't long before I got involved in building this something or the other. So I found my way into what I'm doing now, which is fintech.
So you're not practicing anything to do with robotics.
No, but as you're aware, there's a lot of similarities between building a well-oiled machine mm-hmm. and building a business and building proper financial systems and things like that to help small businesses.
Is it really analogous?
I think so. There are many, in terms of processes that you have to develop. So, for example, there's a process for example, when I checked into the radio station today, I went up to the front desk, and then the front desk person gave a phone call up. That's a process. That is a business process that has had to have been developed over time. And and that's what engineering is kind of about, those kind of processes.
It's just a habit, man. It's just a habit of a culture, really.
Well, when I came back home, I worked for Dad. We worked as management consultants, so helping businesses streamline those processes. So we would come in and we would observe a process like that, and then we would say, well, especially if it was a sales process, you could improve a little bit over here, you could improve a little bit over there, and it improves the whole system. So got used to kind of looking at business in that way.
I wonder if I can use a robotics engineer in JCN. Anyway, I'll think about that.
Oh.
But let's talk about a little bit about Arawak X. Tell us about that company.
So that's there's a parent company called M Dollars.
M Dollars?
Yes, and it's just mobile dollars with a Z.
Okay.
And the Arawak X platform is a equity crowdfunding and SME financing platform. And what that is it basically brings investors together with businesses, small businesses, so that they can sell portions of their company to raise money. As you know, with a business, there's that point in time at the beginning to the medium-sized part of the business where the business may be too risky for a bank to give it a loan. So people are stuck kind of borrowing money from family and friends, scrapping together. Even if they have legitimate ideas, they can't get the funding to grow. Mm-hmm. And so what we're doing is we're sitting right in that gap.
You are fulfilling a need.
That's correct.
And this need exists because of banking policies.
Well, it's not just that. A bank is looking for like a guaranteed return. And as you know, with business isn't guaranteed, especially not at the beginning stages. When a business really needs the help, is the money is when it can't get it. So it's kind of that catch-22. So we're trying to fit there to help businesses grow, because we believe that when businesses grow, the country will be better off for it.
Don't you find in this environment and since the recession that you have a whole lot of businesses that have been around for a little while, mm-hmm. That finding themselves in great difficulty?
Absolutely. When I came home after university, I went off to university in 2008. So
you went off in 2008.
Went off in 2008.
So at the beginning of the recession.
Yeah. So I have my childhood is this rosy kind of picture of all this growth, all of the everybody was flush with cash. Everybody, that was my childhood, and then. During university, I'm hearing from my parents, no, things are really bad here, things are really bad. You're like, oh, no, that can't be right. Uh-huh. And then you come home and things are really bad. Like the recession for the U.S. was a depression for us. Working in the family business, helping companies trying to find, because they had to become more efficient to survive. So it was one of those do or die situations.
The Asir Raming people tell me that if you were able to survive the recession, that you really know what you're doing in business. Eh?
Yeah, and you're very tough.
You're very resilient.
Yes. And
there are a whole lot of people who went under.
Tons of good businessmen that went under too. And it's not because they went under. It was just the climate was so difficult. It was so difficult for so many different things. Like the middle class got squeezed, and as anyone who's in business knows, when the middle class gets squeezed, the whole society feels it.
Yes. And tell us how much things in your mind have changed since the 2008 recession to now.
So I think people have. There was kind of this sense before the recession that there's this unlimited potential for growth. We kind of benefited from the U.S. doing so well that we kind of were lackadaisical about certain business processes. For example, people didn't advertise as much. People just kind of believed mainly in that build it and they will come kind of concept. Mm-hmm. And yes, while you still have people that believe that, I think the business people that have survived realize that they have to do something to get customers in the door. Otherwise, you're not going to have the sales. You can't just wait for people to contact you. You have to be in constant communication with them so that they can, when they're ready to purchase your service or your product, they'll pick you. And that's one of the major changes. Yeah,
there have been many paradigm shifts.
Many.
Yes, since the 2008 recession. Eh? Mm-hmm. But tell me, we are here in 2019, and many years after the onset of the recession, 11 years or so, and the U.S. economy grew exponentially.
Yes, it did.
Ours did not. Our economy didn't grow. As a matter of fact, all of the indices show us that we did not grow. Why?
I believe that it has to do with the same access to financing for businesses. So we have a wealth of ideas here in this country. People have seen, I'm not the only Bahamian that went off to school. People have gone off to school. Some people have gone to Europe and Asia, and they've seen things, and they've seen working things that are could exist here in the Bahamas. Could help, could make a lot of money, especially in the tourism sector directed to the tourists. And the issue is that they have these great ideas, they start companies, but then they're undercapitalized. So they can never kind of get to that point where the business grows. And with something like the tourism industry, when a tourism business grows, it grows the whole economy. So, because they're not taking money away from someone else. People are actually flying it. I'll give you a perfect example. I have a friend who's in Israel, and she contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm coming to the Bahamas." And when we were speaking to her, and she's like, "Yeah, I saw the swimming with the pigs thing on Instagram, and I dragged my whole family here to go see that." So that's an example of something where you're creating something out of nothing. That's money that would have never come in if that service didn't exist. So you know what I mean. It's an expanding kind of pie kind of thing. So when I look at business, I think of it as the better that small and medium businesses do, the more jobs that are going to be created, because each one hires people, and when people are hired, people are going to have money in their pockets. So when they have money in their pockets, they're going to spend more. And when they spend more, everybody benefits, especially business people. And then business people can. It's one of those self perpetuating kind of cycles. And so that's what Arawak X does. We're there to help companies find the financing.
Yeah, you analyze situations.
Yes, and
yes.
So as part of that, finding the financing, they have to be structured properly. So because an investor isn't going to just put his money into any old company, not any idea, but any company. So there's certain structures that have to be in place to make an investor feel comfortable to say, you know what, okay, it's a risk, but I know that these guys are they've really thought this through, and there's a high chance that this could work.
We hear a whole lot about the economies of scale.
Yes.
We have a very small economy.
We do.
And there is...
In some ways.
In some ways?
In some ways.
Explain.
So if you think of... this is why the tourism event space is so popular, because this is why the tourism space is so popular, because we only have 400,000 Bahamians, or around that, depending on how they count. But there are 6 million tourists coming in, more every year. So it's kind of presents an opportunity. You can almost do any kind of business directed at 6 million people, and the numbers start to make sense. You start to have the scale that makes sense. Whereas, if you're only selling to Bahamians, there's only so many of things that we like and we buy. So you really have to sell kind of a big ticket item to get those numbers.
But the point is made that since tourism accounts for 80% or more of our economy, that we are all in tourism.
In some ways, we're into catering to that kind of that demographic, because there are just a lot of them. So yes. I mean, it's natural.
Yeah, you see, I'm in the tourism business
exactly
because I depend on people who cater to tourists to advertise with our radio and television stations. Yes, but we have getting back to the point of the growth of the economy.
Yes.
You made the point earlier on that access to capital is extremely important for an economy to grow.
Absolutely.
Banks have complained that they are awash with cash.
The money is
here. Tremendous amount of liquidity in the system. But they hold on to the cash. They are not keen, apparently, to fund small businesses. And hence you are involved in the finding funding for small and medium businesses in the Bahamas. Why are they holding on to the cash? Why are they not funding small and medium-sized businesses? For instance, why are banks hesitant to give loans to young people for real estate, to buy a piece of land? Tell me.
Well, I can speak to the business part. I think, and this is the big question for kind of like economists and things like that. But I think that the reason is just because it's not within their business model. So they have so a bank, the riskier the client is, the more interest they charge. So that makes sense, right? So the issue is some businesses are just outside of their risk profile. So instead of them charging a 18-20% interest rate, which people would run away from and cry foul with a lot of these businesses, they just don't give them. So it's kind of, so there's that element to it. The next element is that they're not really well suited for this kind of that small medium enterprise kind of environment. Business is very difficult. Anyone who's tried a business before or been involved in small business understands that it's very, very difficult, and it has a high failure rate. And that being said, it takes a little while for things to get refined to the point where the risk is low enough where you can do 4 or 5 years of what is a bank loan? A big bank loan is usually 7 years. Very few small businesses can do a 7-year projection to pay back a loan. That's difficult. So in a way, they're acting very rationally. Now, on the other hand, the issue, of course, is that money needs to be mobilized in the society. If you can't, if that money is just sitting there in bank accounts and not being lent and spent, that money doesn't have an opportunity to grow. And so what we do is we make sure companies are properly structured. They're definitely out of the risk profile of banks, but these companies have the ability to grow 5-10 times with that funding.
Most banks are risk averse.
Absolutely.
Yes? And they are risk averse even though they are charging a lot of fees. All of the banks here are profitable. Yes? They're all profitable.
From what I understand, yes.
They, as a matter of fact, it might be argued that some are too profitable, and that there's such a thing. You wonder whether or not we have the right policies in place in our country. I'm talking from the standpoint of corporate governance and the central bank of the Bahamas to enable the average entrepreneur to grow and to enable the economy to grow.
So I don't want to necessarily dig into the system. I actually have to. I work with the central bank, and they've been very helpful in helping us with what we're doing. So I've
You
always,
don't. You need central bank approval to do what you're doing.
in some ways, yes, because there's a what we're doing. We're also allowing people to raise money from abroad.
I see.
So there's an exchange control element to
Okay,
it.
good. So we'll get to that. Go ahead.
But I would just say that this is not what we're talking about exists in the United States and doesn't exist here, and that's this idea of equity, of sharing of ownership in a business to a certain point. And the reason that the U.S. was able to rebound after the Great Recession is because they didn't just have banks. Banks serve a role in the economy, but they don't serve the whole role in the economy. They have other financial institutions that they can go to that they can get funding for, different ones. So that's what we're fitting in that space.
So you're a Deal Smith.
But we use technology to do it. So the old-fashioned way was you would go to an imam, someone that is well connected, has a lot of influence, and you would put your business plan, all your financials, your projections to him. He would take it and he would shop it around to his connections. We use technology to do that. So the internet has allowed us to take that and put that out to social media and to thousands of people, tens of thousands of people, millions if you open it up when we open it up to the global market. So it's kind of a game changer in that way, and that's the crowd funding element.
Yeah. So you are really a major competitor of banks in the Bahamas.
So no, actually not.
Because they want good customers.
They do.
They want people who have the capacity to borrow and to repay.
That's correct.
You're going after pretty much the same people.
No. So actually what we are is we deal with, like I said, the companies that are too risky for a bank. So they can't do it. Their calculations, they say this is too much risk. So what do you do when you have a great idea that's deemed too risky? The bank isn't going to help you, and no bank anywhere is going to help you for that stuff. You have to turn to equity, and that's kind of where we sit.
I see. And the people you turn to, both local as well as foreign.
Yes. So we solve the problem of how to pull it in from foreign, pulling money from foreign. Yeah.
So you're well connected.
Well, there's that, but we also had to do some legal work and set up all that stuff. So yes.
You mentioned exchange control a while ago.
Yes.
Isn't this a major encumbrance to what you do?
No. So the central bank is worried about keeping. They're worried about the peg. So the way that our funding and financing works, and the process is we work with them and we work with the processes so that they can do that very careful juggling act that they have to do.
And what is that juggling act about?
It's just
to ensure that
our dollar doesn't fall.
Yes,
so that's what that's their main concern.
That you have available exchange you have foreign reserves. You don't impact your foreign reserves negatively.
No, because otherwise that'll make all of us poor. So they have a very difficult job to do. So I'm not. We could sit and debate whether or not they should do things, but that's what they're working.
But why should they worry about that? If you are accessing funding from outside the country, foreign exchange, bringing in foreign exchange into the country, why should they worry about that?
So of course there's an element of, with equity, you're selling ownership in the company itself. So there's an element of repayment, either through dividends. A dividend is just basically after the profits of the business, some of them are taken out and given back to the shareholders.
Mm-hmm.
So that if the shareholder is foreign, they have to send that money back out. So it's a timing issue, not a you can't do it issue. So one of the value adds that our company does is we all the businesses that are listed on there, we work with the necessary regulatory bodies to make sure that everything is done properly, and we take that headache off of small business. Because when you're running a business, the last thing you need to be worried about is that you got too many other things that you're juggling. So that's what we do.
Are you servicing clients that are local as well as foreign?
So no, this is Bahamian.
Just local.
Just local businesses right now.
Why not? Why not foreign?
So, well, that's just not our focus. So we also, as a business, we have our clientele that we're targeting. So Bahamian businesses that are looking to grow between 5 and 10 times. So they got a great idea. Maybe they have a new restaurant concept or a new food truck. You see all these food trucks coming around. That's doing really well. I like the food trucks, and they have a great business model. They're making money, and how do they go from that one food truck to the 10? That's where we want to come in and help them go from that 1 to the 10.
Would you find funding for one?
So, well, our
for a startup, for instance.
Yes. So we fit in the gap between $50,000 and $3 million. So that's the gap that the regulations allow for.
And you are registered with the Securities Commission?
Yes. Yes. So we're working hand in hand with our regulators.
Okay, interesting. And your clients are mainly young people.
So young people, but also, it's amazing. I think that there's a whole generation of people in the Bahamas that are in their 40s to 60s and sometimes even 70s that have great ideas that haven't been able to mobilize them. So they bring, like, for example, two of the companies are, so we have one young person and two people that we have lined up right now that'll be coming out soon. And the two of them are actually in their 50s and older. And they bring so much of their because they were professionals, so they bring all that business knowledge that they were working with. They bring all their connections together. They have a really fantastic team, but even then they can't get access to financing. So it is a big problem for people. I never understood why you would have a man and be paying him. He's a professional. He's worth $200,000 plus a year in salary, and then you can't fund him because the same man, you would trust him with that as salary, but you wouldn't trust him with that as an investment. That doesn't really make any sense. So what we've done is we just make sure that individual has his the proper structure so that he can exceed.
I'm curious and a little I don't understand why you do not consider RWAC, your company, as a competitor to some of these commercial banks.
So their finance is wide. So there are different stages of finance that a company goes through. So it's there's some that work with established companies, and then they can grow them a little bit at a time and produce a consistent return on investment. So that would be a perfect company for a bank because it's stable, it can project long term, it can do those kind of things. And it's also very good companies for like a pension fund, because the money in a pension fund is for when you're old. The last thing you need when you're old is your money to go up and down, up and down, up and down. So that's the kind of companies. So that's the mature companies. Then there are these growing companies. So there's this period where the company grows from like the 1 food truck to the 10 food trucks. That's high growth. That's 10 times. Then there's that period where it grows from 10 to about 30. That's medium. That's about 3 times. And then it goes from 30 to 60. That's 2 times. So you see what I'm saying? There's that growth before it kind of becomes mature. It requires different types of ways of thinking about finance, and so what we're sitting in that pre-revenue to that first Series A, they call it financing, if to use the VC, the venture capitalist talk.
Some years ago, we heard that there was a venture capital fund.
Yes.
Don't know what has become of it. I haven't heard about it for a little while. I heard some bits and pieces from the new government of putting together some initiatives here or there, but not a venture capital fund per se.
So venture capital is an interesting. You're almost walking into the wild west of finance when you talk venture capital. So I'll give you an example. The way a venture capitalist invests. So this is a wild west, gunslinger type person. He'd take his money, his investment, say it's $100,000. He'd break it into 10 parts, and he'd pick 10 companies, and he'd put $10,000 in each. 10 great ideas. The best he thinks this one's going to work 10 times. Because business failed.
Something like Shark Tank.
Yeah, exactly. They're venture capitalist type minded. So you can imagine them. So when you put it into 10 companies, 5 of them are going to fail. Just straight up. They all know it. 3 of them are going to do okay. And 2 of them are going to do really well. So on the aggregate, you've taken that $100,000 and you made it into a lot more. So that's the kind of mentality that you have to have when dealing with these SME companies. And as you, I'm sure, are aware, very few people have that mentality, especially in a town like this. So it's kind of a the crowdfunding allows people to be their own kind of venture capital.
Okay. People who are listening to you now, there might be some people with some great ideas.
Many great ideas.
Many great ideas.
Many great ideas. I believe ideas are given from God. So when people say, I don't want people to know my idea because someone's going to steal it, no one could steal your vision. Only you got that.
They can steal your idea, though.
Yeah, but then they always do a bad job of it. And then when they do a bad job of it and you come in, I think the issue has always been financing. So if, for example, there are other radio stations out there, but your radio station is yours and you had this vision for it. And the vision came to being because it was your vision. If I tried to take it, it would never have looked like this. It would have probably been, half, not even half as good because I didn't have the vision. So that's my belief when it comes to companies and people with ideas.
I mentioned earlier on that this is a small economy.
Yes, it is.
And
in some ways.
There are many copycats.
Yes.
And so there's a copycatish kind of phenomenon or mentality out there. And someone sees that I am making money selling snowballs. And before you know it, you have a whole bunch of people all over this small community selling snowballs. And when you thought that you were on to something great and you saw yourself making a healthy profit, before you know it, you are really sharing your vision with 20, 30 people.
Well, so that's kind of where marketing...
In a small economy.
Yes. So that's kind of that's called your unique selling proposition. So what makes you unique out of your competitors? And that's where marketing and storytelling and things like that come into play, because you have to tell the story of your business. And because people don't buy things necessarily because it's the thing. They buy it because they view that as adding value to their life. And so you have to tell that story, and that's kind of where the business processes come in.
Yeah, but if you were selling services, for instance,
That's correct.
I remember when I came into the radio business, there were 3 or 4. And man, I understand now there was 35 or so or more. Some, as Ed Bethel said to me the other day, just jukeboxes, all right? But someone sent me a note today about this war in terms of rates. And they dumb down rates. And not only do they dumb down rates, they dumb down quality of service as well. And that is not good for an economy and not good for the market.
So you're talking. It's called the race to the bottom, is what you're talking.
The race to the bottom.
The race to the bottom.
I see.
So that's why it's we don't recommend businesses to try and compete only on price. If you only compete on price, if the only thing that you got better than your competitor, is that you have a lower price, you're going to be going down to the bottom with whoever. And the problem with going down to the bottom, as you will find, is that there's no money there. So as a business,
Yes.
you're gonna end up creating a lower quality product, and people are gonna stop listening to your product because the quality is lower, and that's a negative cycle. So it's important that when you are looking to differentiate yourself from your competitors, that you pick something other than price, because, like I say, people don't buy things based only on price. Some things they do, but the things they care about, they don't. So it's, for example, if that was the case, everyone would be driving around one of those little beater cars, where everyone is not.
Yeah, you ought to consider quality, yes?
That's correct.
And well, that is what we are about here. I must put in that note here. You can see it?
I mean, just walking through the building, you could see it.
Is that it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Oh, you're very kind. You're very kind.
I hope you invite me back.
Yes, no problem at all. Okay, given a man, as they say, of your intelligence and your depth and your wisdom, we'd have you back many times. I understand that we have people who are trying to get into this show. So let's open the lines. Mr. Diasi Raming Jr. is our guest on the program today. He's the CEO of Arawak X. He's one of these new gurus in town. 3268255. Give us a call here today. Let's talk. And we are talking about how to use crowdfunding to make your ideas real, and how you can own a piece of the Bahamas. We didn't talk too much about that, but we're going to get to that soon. Hello, you on the air.
Yes, hello. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
I'm enjoying the conversation. This gentleman, me being a finance man, I guess the younger people realizing that real growth happens at the entry level, don't happen at the corporate level, but real economy growth happens at the bottom level. I think of, a guy named Howard Schultz, he wanted to start Starbucks, and, walking into a bank and asking them that he was going to sell tea and coffee, they were laughing out the place. Mm-hmm. But, he was able to gather up some individuals, and, he was able to put his plan forward, and now he ended up with Starbucks, and now it's also in the Bahamas. So I think these kind of crowdfunding or these ingenious ideas of funding a business, I'm really surprised that this has not happened, maybe even government-funded type of thing, with some real strategic, maybe getting some of the older senior people involved in this and appointing someone as a czar to really get some really great ideas going. So even economies around these big resorts, opening up maybe a duck boat, like they have in Boston, where you have tourists who can go on it and go on land and take a tour around the whole Bahamas. I think there's one probably now, but these things were long overdue, where you can really piggyback off the tourism economy, but the funding would be the issue.
Yeah, you're calling me from New York, are you? No?
Yes, I'm in finance.
Yes.
I'm in the finance world, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Well, thank you for calling us from New York. Thank you very much. You want to respond to that?
I was just going to say he is absolutely correct that the growth in companies happens at the beginning. Like I say, it's much easier to grow from 1 to 10 than it is to grow from 10 to 100 or 10 to 50. So it's those people at the initial that are there at the initial firm that become very wealthy off the firm. So it's kind of you can look at all of the Silicon Valley people like Bill Gates and his first 11 employees are all, they all have bigger yachts than we have Navy ships. So it's that's where the value. So when you hear investors and investment people talk about value, shareholder value, that's where the majority of that's created.
Yeah. There are, while you spoke earlier on, I thought about some of my friends who say that they encourage young people not to come back to the Bahamas. We have something of a brain drain.
We do.
Because there are many young Bahamians who do not see opportunities for growth. You are obviously the exception.
I'm fortunate that I grew up in a business family, and business is one of those things that business and money is one of those things that no one is born knowing. You kind of have to be mentored into it, and I'm fortunate enough to have been surrounded by men and women that have been excellent in their careers and excellent business people, and that spirit of entrepreneurship was passed down to me. So, and the spirit of entrepreneurship is seeing opportunity everywhere, So it's, and then I went to engineering school, so I have that kind of the opportunities there, and then I also have spent a good portion of my life studying how to turn ideas into reality. So that's kind of for me. For others, so when you talk about the brain drain, I think the issue is that people don't see. When we go to the States, we see it's already built. So it's a place that is, if you want it, you can have it. If you imagine it, you just go online or you go this place and you can get it. Here is not that way. Here is still developing, still needs to be built. And if you come back home with that mentality that, yes, you're not gonna have all the creature comforts of like being away in the States, but this is a place to build new industries and new things, then it changes your outlook on what this place is. This is as a builder, this is a builder's dream.
It's a builder's dream, you think?
Yes, there's opportunity lying around everywhere. Even if you just when you travel and you say, wow, like you go to Disney World and you say, wow, that's an amazing roller coaster here, and then you come back and you say, oh, why don't we build roller coasters? I mean, that's just an example. But every time you see something, I was fortunate enough to have the training that when I'd say, oh, why doesn't that exist in the Bahamas? Because you didn't build it.
Yeah, but as you say that, you give the impression that opportunities abound here in our country, but not all of these ideas that you see in these large economies, these big countries, can work in the Bahamas.
No, so obviously there's you still have to do your business plan and your financial projections to see whether or not the idea makes sense. But the general attitude, if there wasn't an opportunity here, then why do people keep coming?
Meaning visitors?
Visitors, foreign investment. Why are they coming in if there's no opportunity? That's the question.
Perhaps it's because the proximity to the United States, the climate, and all the rest of it. But in terms of whether or not the business can be profitable is another thing.
Well, that
and it has to do too with government policies and taxes and laws in a country.
So yes, this is still we're a work in progress as a country. So to say everything is rosy would be to ignore the reality. But as a country, we are in control of our own destiny. So we can make these things better. When you go off to the U.S., you can't really control anything that goes on there. So that's the, I would say, for people that are minded to create things and to create new things, we can do that here. I mean, we love to talk about how we all know somebody, right? Well, we all know somebody. That's a beautiful thing. And if you kind of take that attitude of knowing someone and use that to help people and to create value and to if you become a business person and hire people and to help people live their dreams and live better lives, you'll notice things kind of create themselves.
D'Arcy Ramming Jr. I can get caught up with this name. That D'Arcy was a very popular name.
Yeah, it's a famous
yes, yes, a very famous name. So forgive me if I mess up your name every now and then.
No,
we're going to take this break here on our program, and since we had that call from a financial man in New York, we still open our lines 326-8255. You might want to talk about crowdfunding, and you might want to talk about some other aspects of business here in the Bahamas. Equity, crowdfunding, and small and medium business financing. Our topic on the program today. We take this break and we'll come back. We're back here on our program On Point, and D'Arcy Ramming Jr., our guest on the program today, as we talk about crowdfunding and the rest of it. A lot of businesses, small businesses, fail, Mr. Ramming, because of what the late Franklin Butler called people who want instant gratification.
Yes.
Yes. They invest $30,000 now, and they want to make that money back and right away. And sometimes they misuse profits. I want you to speak to that.
So one of the biggest reasons that businesses fail is because they don't structure it properly. And that people go into it with the wrong idea. Businesses often, for the first year or two, don't make any money. Or when I say don't make any money, sometimes, depending on the type of business, like real estate and stuff like that, you could have no revenue, no sales coming in. So that's only money going out the door, not money coming in. So you have to have kind of this grit to yourself if you're going to be a business person, just to know that it's not necessarily because the idea isn't great. Maybe the timing is wrong. Maybe the way you're selling it is wrong. So it takes time to figure out kind of what the market values. And when I say the market, your customers and what they value. So that's probably the big thing to do with it. Also,
there are. I interviewed Mr. Butler. He's deceased now, many years ago, and he told me that there are many young Bahamians going into business, and the first thing they want to do is to buy a flashy car after they make some money, that kind of stuff. And I think that is what he meant by instant gratification. People who do not know how to control the finances and misuse our funds. And with equity crowdfunding, your clients really need to be accountable, right?
Yes. So the way we make sure that people are accountable. So The platform's job is we sit between investors and businesses, and we kind of structure it so that neither takes advantage of the other.
And your job is ongoing with the development of a company?
Yes.
Okay.
So ongoing. Actually, we hold things together through legal agreements.
I see.
So you can, through legal agreements, say whether or not you control certain types of behavior, and so that accountability makes sure that, for example, you don't take the profits out of the business, and you don't take the working capital. Let me not say the profits, the working capital, and use it for a fancy car. Now, when he pays his dividend, so a dividend is where you, as a shareholder, have rights over a certain amount of the profits. What a guy does with his dividend, don't care about, because when he got paid, you got paid, because the dividend goes out to everybody at the same time. So if me and you own our shareholders in a company, and I got my $10,000 and you got $50,000, I shouldn't care less what you do with that $50,000, because I got my $10,000. I got what I was entitled to. And so that's kind of the so when you see the guy driving around the flashy car with us, you know that all of his shareholders, they also got paid. So that's I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that that you should control what a person should do with their personal money. Company money, completely different. But personal money, he worked hard for it.
Yeah. So in the way you operate Arawak X, your
Yes.
company, does it control the equity funding?
So how it works?
You raise the funding.
So we raise the funding, and then we the companies are structured in a way where not to tie the business owner's hands, but just so that he sits down and there's some common ways that companies have failed in the past. So we try and eliminate those common ways. For example, if I'm a shareholder and I get paid in dividends, and all of a sudden the executive raises his salary so that there's no profit in the company, he's taking his money out through salary, not through dividends. The idea is you want both the investor and the business owner, the founder, their interests to be aligned.
Yeah. Do you have a say in that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
So if you're companies that list on us, because the truth is, if you're not bound by certain things, you're not going to do it.
Okay.
That's the truth.
Okay.
And so,
Hello, you're on the air.
Good afternoon. How you doing, Mr. John?
Fine, thank you.
And to your guest, I just wanted to know from you what benchmark, what size company do you start working with first, and then secondly, what do you say about a business? Like say a cottage business, very small little business, and they're doing pretty good just from hand to pocket to bike. But there is opportunity to just take off if you have investment. I mean, what are the pros and cons? Would you say, well, take the chance, or if you're satisfied with just operating your little cottage thing there, just go ahead and do that. You don't owe it, and you're not indebted to anybody. Just go ahead and make your whatever small margin to be.
Okay.
thank you for the question.
Yes.
So there's two basic questions. The first one is the benchmark. So we deal with companies that need between 50,000 and 3 million. So that's going to differ widely depending on the industry and the industry needs. But your realistic example of the cottage. So what's interesting about that is that the business owner has to decide whether this is worth it to him. So obviously, it's kind of like taking on investors, for better or for worse. The best analogy is kind of like entering a marriage. You have to know that there's some things you're not going to be able to do anymore, but you get a benefit out of it. And so it's kind of that understanding that, okay, if I'm going to take this investor's money on it, he's worried 150% about how he's going to get his return. he likes you, he likes the business, but ultimately at the end of the day, he's interested about his return. And so certain things need to be in place that give him comfort, so he'll give you the money. So you have to kind of pretty up your business so that you can fit that mold for investors. So the cottage, if the cottage person has a company that owns cottages and wants to grow, say instead of with the one cottage and he wants to take it to 10 cottages, to do that through banking financing might be too expensive. This is just another tool for him to take that. Real estate in general works really well with banks. But, even still, people get denied loans all the time.
Yeah, he talked about cottage industries. In order for a business to succeed in a small environment like this, you have to be really creative.
Very creative.
Yes?
Constantly learning. Very creative. This is kind in many ways the Wild West.
Yes.
But I don't say that to put anyone off of it. It's just that you have to understand that this is not something you can really be asleep at the wheel and expect things to go. They might go well once in a while, but they're not gonna. To get consistency, you have to really be into it. Like, for example, I spend a good portion of my day reading and learning and improving every aspect of what I'm doing, because that's what it takes. So
success is consistency over time.
Yeah, it's
consistency over a long period of time.
A long period of time.
Yes.
And so, there's a lot of different. There's so much material out there. There's so many ways. What's great about business and ideas and this kind of things is it's not a zero-sum game. Meaning, if there are two business people, both of them can be successful. Now, different markets are obviously going to create different levels of success, but both can be successful. Both can see their ideas into fruition, and that's the great part about it. And as one grows up and another grows up and another grows up, another business, as they grow up, they add to the community as a whole. And that's when you see economists talking about GDP growing, it's really this collective growth of everyone. So.
Are you at all satisfied, Mr. Ramming, that people with your expertise are called on in the business community for assistance, for guidance?
That's when you see people and they're consultants, they consult on an aspect of businesses. So, for example, sometimes if your books are not in order, you would hire an accountant to come in and consult on the process, so that you can have better books, because people are afraid of numbers, but all these numbers do is they give you the information so that you can make better decisions. So that's important, because if you have the information, you can make better decisions, and better decisions is going to mean that you're not going to come out of left field wondering why you've run out of cash because you have all this inventory. So that instead of going from that, those are the kind of things that can be improved. A business is like a child in the sense, or even an adult. There's always things that we can do to improve. It's like a person in many ways.
And data is extremely important.
Of course.
Statistics, numbers are very important, because you have a whole lot of people who fly from the seat of the pants, so to speak.
Yes, but unfortunately, you're going to always be limited to. You're going to be limited in how big you can grow if you're doing that. You have to, at some point, look at the objective reality of what your business is doing in terms of sales, in terms of expenses, in terms of these things, and then you just make a informed decision based on that objective reality. And
you say make an informed decision, Mr. Ramming, but aren't there many businesses that have grown and they have thrived on the basis of just instinct?
So
people who operate from the gut.
so the instinct is the why. That's what I mean by coming back to that idea of the vision. You know, your instinct is also one of those things as a business person you have to trust. But you want an informed instinct. You don't want a you want to if your instinct is to jump off a cliff, you don't want to jump off the cliff. But you want to am I making any sense? You want to guide your instinct, so either through with consultants or mentors or different types of people, because like I say, this is a constantly evolving, constantly changing world, and so we have to kind of always believe in what we're doing, but always be open to the information that's coming in.
And you have to understand the market in which you are operating.
That's correct. That's correct. And those are in many ways it is this what I think what makes business so hard. It's a delicate balancing act of all these things. And so if you're going to do it, you might as well do it and do it to a level where you can enjoy it.
Because there are a whole lot of people who have failed just on the basis of instinct, eh?
That's correct. Yeah, there's more people there are more what do they say? More ideas in the graveyard than anywhere else. But that's because they're flying by the seat of your pants. At some point, no matter what happens to you, this can catch up with you. So you have to temper yourself. That's with the people around you.
Temper yourself.
Yes. So no one that's part of the structure. The structure is the team. So there's a team of people. If you're not good with numbers, you got to have someone on there that's good with numbers.
So the days of going to an institution and borrowing money on the basis of collateral, those days are gone. Because it has to do with your ability to repay. Isn't that right?
Yes, and in many cases, our ideas don't fit the mold that they're looking for. So it's I don't want to say they're gone. They still exist. It's just that it's a narrow scope of things. And also, speaking about loans and collaterals, most of what I've noticed about in working back home is that a lot of Bahamians have collateral for a lot of different things. But that collateral is in their personal name. And the business needs to kind of be separated from the personal. And that's one of the reasons, another advantage of doing this kind of thing, because a business can fail. Businesses often do fail. But you don't want that to drag you down at the same time. If you personally put up your house and your business fails, you could lose your house, and if you lose your house, you're homeless.
Yeah, but aren't there funds and banks that call for debentures, and they tie you down by getting you to sign debentures in order to guarantee the repayment of loans?
Well, I mean, that's you say they tie you down.
Yes, they do.
Oftentimes we look at the that being our only option, and that's kind of it's excuse the terminology, but it's called a fool's choice. You have the option to walk away, and what makes the option easier is having an option such as Airwag X, where you have other ways of getting that money. If the only way you can get that money is to sign on the dotted line, then is that really a negotiation? That's not a negotiation. That's an ultimatum. It's kind of like sign. I have a gun pointed to your head. You have to sign this. It's not really a fair kind of.
But institutions in our country have been very unfair, and hence the slow growth of many businesses and the slow growth of our economy. Because you've had financial institutions who have put guns to people's heads and say to them, listen, I need to hold on everything. I need a debenture on everything.
Yeah, it's well, I think that this just stems from the people not having options. When you have options, you can and you understand your options, you can say, you know what, I'm not going to sign that. I'm just go somewhere else. And that's one of the things that we're looking at, because the economy is it needs funding to grow. It needs money moving to grow, but it doesn't need it to move. It needs to move into productive areas where people can kind of, a business growing from one cart to 10 carts has to hire people. It has to, it has to buy supplies. That's all productive uses of money. Whereas sometimes this money is kind of just. I hear you. There's a lot.
Yeah. Financial literacy is extremely important, Mr. Raming. And perhaps you should speak to that. There are a whole lot of people who want to go in business, who want to have access to equity crowdfunding, but simply, for want of a better term, financially illiterate.
Mm-hmm. So we actually put together, so we deal with businesses, yes, but also investors. And what we've been doing is we created an online video course for investors so that they can see kind of how a professional investor looks at and evaluates a company, so that they can have a framework with which to start. It doesn't go in depth. You can spend literally your whole lifetime perfecting whatever your method is going to be for your investments. I mean, Warren Buffett's 80 something and he's still learning. So it's one of those things that you're never going to know everything, but it gives you a framework. And it's not mathy, because you don't really need math to understand as an investor, as long as the platform has verified that this is true. So that is invest242.com. It's a free online course, about 30 minutes. Each block is about 2 minutes long. You can look at it, and it just kind of, you can sign up on your phone. It kind of gives you a framework of what to look at.
Okay. Let's take our final break here, Mr. Raming. This is our program On Point, and we have a good guest today because we are talking about equity crowdfunding, how to fund your small or medium-sized business, how to get financing from Arawak-X. You get plenty of money?
Oh, so we actually don't fund, but
you raise money.
Yeah, we'll hook you up.
That's what I'm talking about. Let's take a break here. This is our final break, and we'll come right back. We're back here in our final segment of our program. It's 17 minutes past 6 o'clock, and we are speaking with R.C. Raming Jr. And how can you own a piece of the Bahamas? Let's talk about that, Mr. Raming. You said to me just now during the commercial break that we live next door to the richest and most powerful country in the world.
That's ever existed.
Yes. And so we're not taking advantage of that proximity.
No. I mean, many of our problems seem very small in comparison. You just turn the news on, and they're talking about hundreds of millions, tens of billions of dollars floating around that place, and it's just kind of like, how do we kind of position ourselves to better take advantage of that?
We certainly have not, given as I said, the state of our economy over the last 11 years. You would have seen the employment numbers fall precipitously in the United States. You would have seen the growth in their economy booming. And Mr. Trump has taken a lot of credit for it, even though people believe that most of the credit ought to go to the Obama years.
No comment there. But But it is something that we need to evaluate better, especially as the world becomes more global. We need to figure out what our place in it is, and I think tourism is a good place to start, because we're really not we're kind of doing tourism light. We have the great hotels. We have,
tourism light.
yes. So I'll give you an example.
Like Bud Light?
Yeah.
I see.
So I'll give you an example.
Uh-huh.
So people think of the city of Orlando, right? The city of Orlando was nothing. It was just bush until Walt Disney built his attractions. Do you know that there are over 100 independent attractions in the city of Orlando? So what that's done is around each attraction is built up hotels and restaurants and and then of course the services and all those things that kind of accompany it. But those attractions draw people in, and then they do that. We can certainly grow in that area, and this is not my idea. There's a great thinker that Pat Ramming that has written books on these kind of things. But the idea is you find ways to bring people into the country, and then the traditional kind of tourism takes over. So it's what attractions, what unique things can we do to bring people in from the world? I earlier in the program talked about the swimming pigs and my friend coming from Israel just to go to that. That's a unique thing that brings people in. And I can tell you there are people with tons and tons of ideas of unique things that are 100% Bahamian, that can bring money and add value to the world and bring people in.
So
they just need to be financed.
Yes, they need to be financed, and so hence ROX can find the funding, or your job is to find funding for good ideas.
Yeah, we facilitate it. So we don't have a direct role in finding it, but through technology, we have a platform that exists online that people can.
So I develop a good idea, and I come to you and I say, this is an idea that I have, and let's use your example. I believe that it can be very good for our tourism industry. It can attract visitors to the Bahamas, and I have capital of $200,000, but I need $2 million. And you find my idea exciting. What do you do?
So we would meet and make sure that you have the proper structure in place. That means business got to be incorporated, certain legal things. Make sure the team is right. We give some advice in terms of things that we've seen in the past, so you miss some certain pitfalls. Make sure that you have, you come into, you put your best foot forward.
You would do some research.
So we do some research.
Yes.
We do help companies in getting ready for crowdfunding and SME financing, and so we would do that. Then we would open it up to some private equity people. Those are people that can maybe move that $200,000 a little bit closer to maybe about $1 million. We want to try and get to around that range, and then we release it to the crowd. And we work with the regulators. We take care of all of the non-businessy stuff so that the business person can focus on making sure that their business idea works. And so, when you're raising that kind of money, you might as well put your best foot forward. And so that's kind of what we do. We also help with valuations and things like that.
Valuation?
So a valuation is if the company is worth, so you're raising $2 million and the company's worth $10 million, then you have to sell 20% to the company to get the
20% to which company?
Of the company to investors to get if it's worth $10 million. So
Okay.
that's the valuation. So the numbers are not random; they're based off of different
I see. So you would do an assessment. You
That's
do
correct.
an appraisal of the whole thing.
Pretty much, yeah, exactly,
Yes.
an appraisal.
Yes.
So that's the best way to say it.
And I will pay you a fee.
So their fees,
for
yeah, their fees, and our fees. There's a setup fee to prepare all that legal work and do all that, and then there's a success fee, which means that when the raise is successful, then we would get a percentage of the raise. But that's how finance works, just in general.
Yeah.
So anytime, any type of finance, even the bank, well, especially the bank, that's that interest. You could think of it similar.
Yeah. You have a staff?
Yes, so we got a staff. We're about to actually staff up. So yeah, I gotta hire an in-house lawyer and some compliance officers and some things like that.
You need an in-house lawyer.
Yeah, so it's a lot of
You have a CPA, yes?
yes. So we have CPAs on our board of advisors and things like that. So we're gonna need that. We're gonna need I have to run the business of my business too. So I completely understand when business people come in.
What about your competition here?
So right now we're first to market. I don't expect to be the only one in the market. That's unrealistic. So I do expect there will be competition, but like I say, finance is so wide that I'm sure we're going to find different niches. We're interested primarily in the high growth opportunity companies, the people that say, you know what, if I had the money, I got this great chicken restaurant. If I had the money, I could, I could compete with KFC.
Why do you limit yourself between 50,000 and 3 million?
Well, that's regulatory, so I can't.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that's set by the regulations.
But you would like to be, of course, more than that, eh?
I will say that. Of course, but our regulators have been really, really, really helpful. It's like the greatest relationship, because like they're super, super progressive in some of these things. They even, for this type of investment, reduce the age so that people of age 15 can buy into these companies. So it's super, super progressive. We're really, really happy to work with them, and as we work this through, we're going to need to be working together, because it's going to be a work in progress.
A work in progress. Well, you come with with qualifications in robotics, and you've turned that into you're becoming a financier, eh?
Well, fintech. So it's still very heavily on the technology side.
Yes.
I have to deal with all that stuff.
Yes, but since you're raising money and advising people on money, that is what financiers do. Yes.
Yes, it's a mixture of my dad, who's the chairman's love for financial inclusion and better businesses and technology, and so we're really happy to be doing this.
And in the process, you want to empower a whole lot of young Bahamians.
That's right. We this truly is when you go out on the boat or something. This truly is a beautiful country, and I believe that more and more people, when they have access to this kind of financing, will be able to really understand how truly we do live in paradise.
We've complained for many years about the access to capital.
It's one of the biggest problems.
Yes, and given what you are doing, this is one less excuse for people to talk about access to capital.
Well, there's always going to be issues of access to capital.
Yes,
but closing that gap. That's what we're trying to fit in that space. So you asked about competition. No, there are no competitors in this space at this moment. There's a big gap. They can help you after about $3 million. You can find people to help you, and under $50K, you almost a lot of people can hustle that. So it's that middle part.
You can hustle under 50,000 in this market.
Yeah, so I would say no. Like what I mean by that is from borrowing from family and friends, maybe selling a piece of property, or
I understand. I understand.
It's tangible for people.
Yes, it's not very much, yeah. Considering everything is relative.
It's relative, yeah. It's a lot to be spending on a one ticket item, but it's companies exist at a bigger scope.
It has been a pleasure speaking with you today. We have learned a whole lot on fintech and on equity crowdfunding, and we hope to have you back again so that we can talk about some other issues. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Darcy Ramming Jr. Came at very short notice today, and not short notice, but a short request, I should say.
Yes.
Thank you so very much. Appreciate your being here. Thank you for listening to our program On Point, and we trust that you enjoyed it and you've learned some things today. That is
my office phone.
Your phone number?
Yes.
Oh, you can tell me your phone number. I'm
so,
not going to charge you a dime.
Okay. So if you're a business looking for financing, you can, and this is something that interests you, you can call the office at 810-0333. So that's 810-0333. If you're an investor looking for some financial education, you can go on to invest242.com.
Good. Thank you so very much. Thank you for listening to our program. Good evening, everyone.
Thank you.